Welcome. This is a presentation for Seedling School, specifically the kindergarten pod. The kindergarten pod is something I'm looking forward to starting next fall in the beginning of the year when school starts and most people start homeschooling. And it's for kids into kindergarten. So these are for parents right now who have preschool children, ages 4, 5, 6, who are going to start kindergarten next year. I guess maybe not 4, but and so you're all on an adventure. Maybe you're already homeschooling your older children, or maybe this is all new to you. And so I thought either way, it might be fun to hear about this idea that I have for you all. And when I start with anything with Nature Song, a program or like an event that I'm coordinating or a gathering, I always love to think about how I want to feel, how everyone involved feels, because that will dictate what you do and how you interact with each other. So that's a big question. I think that sometimes, when we're homeschooling, we think about what curriculum, what programs, but I like to sit back sometimes, and think about what are those feelings that you want to have, and what would that take to feel that way? Like if you want this cozy feeling, um, then maybe you're setting up your classroom in a way that feels really nice and cozy and beautiful. If you are wanting to feel like adventurous, maybe your type of homeschooling is very more hands-on and you're like learning together and you're going to places and learning. Or maybe you want to feel connected with other families and you want to co-create a homeschooling and learning together. Or maybe you want a little bit more relaxed and you don't want to follow this exact curriculum, or maybe you do want the sense of like direction and like, this is what we're doing each day, and you want to like set curriculum. So for me with homeschooling, for my daughter personally, for me right now, a big need is this sense of belonging. I want to feel like I belong to this group of people, and I want her to feel like she belongs to this group of people that meet weekly, where she can build relationships with them. And I think that came from when I was a classroom teacher. I met with the kids and I was with them, I taught for 9 years and I was with each group of kids for an extended amount of time. So we created this class culture, like inside jokes or singing or laughter, or there was times when we were serious, or there was times when we celebrated someone or we recognized them in a way, or we had I had kids teaching each other, like mentoring each other. And it just feels so good, especially I think for, well, all ages. We want to feel like we have our people and we belong. And we can definitely have that in homeschooling with our families. Like that's a big part of it, right? Is we want to be with our children more, and we want our children to be with their siblings. But I think there's an extra layer that I would love to have for myself and my daughter, is this like love, this other group of people that I don't necessarily, they might not be my best friends, but they're like a group that is like a separate group of meeting individuals where my daughter can have other mentors and learn from other people and come together and plan things and look forward to celebrations and gatherings and such, and events and field trips and all of that fun stuff. And so that explains a little bit of my bigs. The bigs is for older kids, and that's what I'm talking about for my daughter. But today we're talking about the kindergarten pod, which is in the middle between the littles, which are families for kids ages 2 to 5. The kindergartens are ages 5 to maybe 6 or 7, and the bigs is families with ages 8 to 12. And I have often people say, well, I have a lot of older kids and younger kids. And I think if that is the case, if you have a different variety of ages, just connect with me and I can kind of guide you to tell you where I think maybe your family would fit best in this pod idea. So each pod is, I would love to see have about 6 to 7 families in each pod. So right now I have a littles pod with 5. And then I started another littles pod that had 5. And it's important to have that amount just in case, especially nowadays with like in the winter time, people are sick or they're busy and they're out of town. So having a larger group starting with that will always mean that there'll be someone gonna be there when you meet. And so this is weekly as well for all 3 of these pods, is the idea of showing up with a routine and regular, like coming together, a commitment to always showing up, I think is huge, huge, huge. I see that on my side with like a community gathering kind of planner, like it is harder to nowadays after COVID to find people that are starting that pattern of coming regularly and showing up. It's something I think that creates this bond and creates the community structure that's makes it stay. Without that, things dwindle and don't last. And if with all 3 of these pods, they're all outdoors. That is probably the glue for all pods is this the outdoors and nature awareness is the glue that brings everyone together. For the littles in kindergarten, it's more, there's a lot of play associated with that for the kids and for the adults. I love a playful adult who wants to get in there and like play and pretend with all the other kids. But it's imaginative play in those pods. And then for the bigs, for sure, if you want that happens, but it's more of a academic focus or a play in a different way. All 3 are socializations, especially I created for the littles, the idea of parents coming and supporting themselves and finding a network of other parents with similar interests. I had this goal because when I had my daughter was younger, I had a play pod, a nature play pod that met weekly, and it became my like mainly for me. Like I had that time that I knew every week we would meet with other adults, and I'd have time to share and process and ask questions and laugh and have that time for myself while my kids were off playing. It was wonderful. And I think that's so needed for us right now is this time where it's not just us running around to do things for our children here, dropping them here to this class, this class, this class, like slowing down and realizing, what do I want to explore? What do I want to play? What do I want to learn? What do I want to do? What will help me as an adult? And if you're happy as an adult, your children are going to be happy and they're going to feel that. And that's a culture I'm trying to cultivate with Seedling School. And for the kindergarten pod, a lot of hands-on learning. And I'll explain that. I took the standards of kindergarten and I'll share some of those, like why I think it works. This idea works, I think would work so wonderfully starting in kindergarten. Setting a base for cooperative and co-creating as pod together. And then as the kids get older, this idea of Seedling School will evolve with them. And then I had for kindergarten field trips. I think kids love going to the zoo and to the museum or as a group, that's a special thing to do that, my daughter was always like with homeschooling, she's kind of bummed that she never has as many field trips as like some of the like public school kids. So, and then maybe I'll share a little bit about the bigs. The bigs is, I have Ava, my daughter is in a big group. We meet, and I'm still forming this idea of finding guest teachers, people out in the community who would love to share for an hour their passion or their knowledge base around a specific topic. So if you are a person that research volcanoes, we would love to talk to you and learn about volcanoes from your perspective and learn all that you know in that hour, like you could give just like a highlight of get kids excited about topics. And, that's the thing is if they're excited, they go and they'll get books from the library or you'll watch videos. You can write about them. You can talk about them. Like this kind of learning is like a hands-on in the environment kind of thing. So my goal would be that we have volunteer projects that we focus on throughout the year. Maybe we adopt like an elderly person who needs help with like their yard work, or we think of something in our community that needs support and we can put our energy in like and show up and help. I think that's a huge aspect of like what I want my daughter to have is this idea that we are here as helpers for the world, and we even at as small little ones can do such great things, such kindness and share with the world. And then field trips like going to the zoo, but like learning in a more academic way. A lot of the kids I noticed that are in this big group are like they've been outside for so long that they know a lot of the basics, and so this group is for more like adding more of the academic part of it. So here is a big pod, the big pod that I started in August. We first started with the nature journaling. Hannah shared, she was a guest teacher, shared about her love of journaling, and she showed us examples, and she showed us a few of the things that are often placed in journals. This is the mushrooms picture is my daughter's journal. After that, she got really excited. We went and bought a journal, and she brings it and she creates pages and asks questions, and just like, I think it's such a big special tool that could be used in these big pods. The middle picture in the garden is at Forget Me Not Nursery with Courtney, and she invited us and we helped her harvest celery and kind of put her garden to bed. With the big pod, there's a picture on the top with a big and a little, and there's two of those. I think there's such a relationship that can be built between a young child and an older child, and this mentoring and coming together. So the bigs were helping the littles make their lanterns for this Seedling School lantern walk that we're gonna create together on Friday. And so I love that. We went to Byers Nursery and learned about that homestead and how it started, and learned about apple trees. That was a fun field trip. And then there's us doing jiu-jitsu in the park. I think that was jiu-jitsu. Just learning, what that's about. Maybe one of, that sparks some interest. It was fun to do. Okay. I think I might have missed. Oh, I might have taken out a picture of the littles. Oh, no. I had some lovely slideshow of the littles, and they're the 2 to 5 age in nature, and but I don't have that. So we have the little pod, the kindergarten pod, the big pod, and then I do want to start some adult pods. And with all of that, I'm calling it the forest, is all the different pods. So I can imagine different pods starting throughout Anchorage, meeting in Russian Jack here, or Forsyth Park here, or Kincaid. And at times like this lantern walk, we all come together as a big, large group, and I'm calling it the forest, to do special things together. So I'm thinking in, the summer, a camp out at Aklutna where everyone in the forest is invited, and we kind of just take over that whole campground, and we play together, and we have a bonfire in the evening, and we sing songs, and we play big group games. And I see so much that different ages, large group, maybe even elders, community elders, people that are, you know, maybe they don't have young kids anymore, joining in and creating these special seasonal celebrations and other things. So here I have a picture of one of the first things I ever created was a May Day event where we had the May Day pole and we had bubbles and we made flower crowns. I'd love to do that again. Um, Here's a picture of a solstice spiral for my daughter. This was at Winterberry, but could be done with this big group of, you know, kindergartners is walking the solstice spiral and having a little candle that's not lit and walking to the center, having it lit, and walking out. And there's a lot of beauty into that, like the light, talking about light, inner light, and how we share our inner light with the world. Um, the picture with all the candles is a little pod doing that. That was my daughter and my son. We I started a nature cooperative family group similar to this pod idea, and we met for 3 years in the woods, and we did this. We met weekly, and we did a lot of these celebrations together. The picture of all the kids and mamas are, we would go blueberry picking, you know, and that became a big thing for us. And then I love the idea of coming together and celebrating like the solstice and the equinoxes. So one is of the summer and one of them is the fall equinox. And this is more, Generation Circle would be more for the adults, with the idea of finding people that want to explore the rites of passage that we experience as humans, moving from childhood to adolescence and adolescence to young adult, and then parenting, moving out and moving into menopause. Like there's all these big life transitions that I can see us coming together and bringing into our culture, that Seedling school culture. So, you know, motherhood, how do we support mothers? What kind of pods can we create that support moms? What kind of like, my friend Peggy is going to start a parenting pod where the both partners of the child come and they learn and explore their values, and it's like a class, you know, like instead of reading a book by yourself or listening to a podcast, you're coming together with other like people to talk about this, and establish those relationships. So it's like a bigger circle. I do a lot of I have in the past done workshops for girls and taught them about menstruation, and I do it in a different lens of not just like physical, what's going on with your physical body, but like how do we use this transition as something to help guide your life, like menstruation awareness, cycle awareness, knowing your body and how it feels in each day of your cycle, and how it can dictate how you show up for others, or how you set boundaries, and how do you just have self-care and self-love for yourself when you're experiencing different, you know, hormonal fluctuations. And so my goal is to like have this circle Seedling school. And I'd love to talk about that in another time, because it's a big idea and it takes time to explain, and I don't want to make this a very, very long video. Okay. I love this part. I was a teacher for 9 years. My first year I taught kindergarten, and I memorized the academic standards, because I loved knowing that there was like, oh, well, there's all these, like for math for kindergarten, it's not that complex. There's 25 standards for kids. And if you know them, like, you can do like explore what's on those standards anywhere. You don't need them in a little workbook or on a worksheet, in my opinion. There's so many options out there. And when I looked and I counted that 22 out of the 25 math standards can be explored in nature. So for example, know number names and count sequence. Well, you know, I can imagine this kindergarten pod having a circle where they gather and they sing songs and they do games. And the games are all things that they're learning in kindergarten. So Everyone's jumps, like you start with one person, you jump and you say one, and the next person says two, three, all the way around, and you can see how far you can count up. You can count by twos. Like there's so many different ways of counting in a group where you're physically moving and you're doing it together. You could This is what we did for one of the seedling pods I did this fall, was we ran and we gathered leaves and we counted how many leaves we had. One of the standards is like putting things from greatest to smallest. So we lined up the leaves from the biggest leaf to the smallest leaf. Another was count to tell the number of objects. So that is very permanence of like 1 acorn means number 1, 2 acorns mean 2. So that's easy to do, except we don't have acorns. I wish we did. Comparing numbers, like I said, let's look at the leaves. Who has the most? How many do you have? Do you have a bigger amount than, Johnny over here? Who has the least amount? Adding. It was so much fun during a game that I played with the kids in Seedling School in the fall. I taught this girl subtraction. She knew she had 6 pine cones that she hid somewhere, and she had gathered 2. And I was like, so how many are left? And she's like, oh, using her finger, like 4. And I could see it working, and it was something she was so excited about. So math can be taught so well in nature. Reading. I love reading. And during these circles, there's a lot of things you can do to support this. This is one of the standards. Demonstrate understanding of spoken words, symbols, and sounds. So recognize and produce rhyming words. There's so many fun songs to sing with rhyming words where you say something and then the child or adult thinks of a rhyming word that goes with the last word. You could play off that, counting, pronounce, blend, and segment syllables. Okay, we have the word, my brain, stick. How many syllables? Stick. Or we say our names, right? Like Amy, Sally, Sally. We can go around in a circle and just say our name and count the syllables, and then say how many syllables were in each person's name. That's something I did in kindergarten, like almost every day for like a month. Blend and segment onset rhymes of single syllables. So if I say grass, we would say grr. Wait, okay, I got to do my teacher thing. Grass. Grass. And rock, rock, like that can be easily done. And then we'll just keep going. There's like, you could do a lot of these things, and you can find a curriculum, that will help you out there, and you could do that within your group, take turns doing this. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Reading with prompting and for ask and answer questions about literary text using key details from the text. We could bring out books, and ask questions. I love my daughter's Waldorf education for just sharing stories, You could read a story and then you could talk about the details with the kids. They can retell the stories. They could, I used to have, and I still have like these wooden figures, and Ava would retell the story that I told, about a little girl in an apple orchard, and she would retell the whole story with all the key details. And what's special is, these really enrich stories with a lot of beautiful words. The kids start using them and they learn how to speak in like a more advanced way because they're telling a story with beautiful words. With prompting the support, identify characters, studying major events, and problem solution in a story, song, or poem. That can be easily done with stories too. For writing, state an opinion or a preference about a topic or a part of a book. Well, I mean, we don't have to always do just topics or books, right? We could kids could dictate like their opinion on Do we like the winter or summertime in the woods better? Because, why? Because, compose information, explanatory, can never say that word, explanatory text in which they name what they are writing about and supply some information about the topic. So a lot of times in kindergarten, this is just a research paper, right? Like we go and we're by ducks and the ducks, and they can just start, they could draw the duck and like illustrate and write the parts of the duck and just write one sentence about it. And same with narrative writing. So that being said, the pods in the way I imagine for this kindergarten pod, we would start meeting probably either, I'm hoping to find a bunch of you all that are interested in exploring this starting in January, even though it is pretty cold outside. It might work better to start in April. And we meet and we form those relationships, and it starts out just as a play pod where the kids come and they meet and they play out in nature, and the parents get to know each other, and you meet weekly and you have like a rhythm, and you start the rhythm of a circle. And that's my job, is to like teach you how to form a circle and sing songs and teach you the songs and just explore like how you can use that form of learning in this pod. After that, like the circle kids can go play. They're a little bit older than the 2 to 5, so they can play more independently, and the parents can start talking about how they want this pod to be. There's a lot of curriculum out there that you could explore, and each parent could take turns teaching something, or it could be a lot more open-ended where we just take a standard and we think about how we could like do that standard in that week's gathering. It can be formed by the children's interest. Like I said, there's one park where there's ducks, and they're so into that, and that could be a big thing. That could be a unit of study. Fall could be a unit of study, like photosynthesis. Like there's just so many things. And this April pod will be exploring the idea of how we want to do that, and communicating and learning and creating this little cooperative that will meet in August. And so, yeah, I'm basically looking for people that they know they want to be in community with others. They want that for themselves. They want to find people they love nature, that is like nature is the glue, and being aware and having kids that are like, we just have nature awareness and we bring that into our culture, and this sense of love for the world, and singing and this idea of like school doesn't have to be just in a set curriculum at home in a workbook. Like I know there's people out there thinking about like unschooling, or even units of study or hands-on learning, like what that looks like. And I think that coming now in April and kind of talking about that first and finding other people that are interested in this idea will spark so many ideas, and you can start playing around with this. Yeah, I would like to end this video because it's probably getting long, but I wrote, what would you like to co-create with others? From this pod, the kindergarten pod, starting most likely in April, I will meet with you for 6 weeks, and we'll explore this together. And then in August comes, I'll meet again with you guys just to really get the group formation started. And for Nature Song, I do a lot of things are just this is kind of a new way of showing up, right? Like usually we have things that are already told, like this is how you're going to do it, and you can come in and do it, and there's some great benefits to that, but sometimes that prevents us from really thinking outside the box of how we want to show up in community, and how we want to homeschool. this is our opportunity to do it in a way that really serves us and is creative. So, yes, I hope if there's any questions, I think I probably missed a few things. My brain, I'm not a detailed person, so sometimes I miss important parts. But thank you for being here and listening. And yeah, take care.